Thank you, sir. Appreciate your presentation. Senator Hill, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Givens, it's nice to see you again. Thank you for being here today. You know, I think it was in December when I live in the Bay Area, and listening to the media, I heard that a $5 million grant was coming for earthquake early warning. And basically what I was hearing was that we've solved the problem, we've got the funding, we're on the way, it's done. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I know different than that. And you just articulated the $24 million necessary. I was really shocked to hear it and surprised. So I called Cal OES to get the details to find out what actually happened, because that was not my understanding. And they shared with me the copy of the letter that they had sent to, I guess, Ms. Kimball, the acting director of USGS in Virginia. And I quote in there that it says that any and all USGS activity, because the $5 million obviously did not adequately supply or support the effort in totality. And the comment was any and all USGS activities that confuse and or allows for misconstruing our collective efforts to fund, develop, and implement statewide earthquake early warning. So basically the question is, what is the USGS doing to kind of coordinate the messaging of this so myself as well as other members of the public aren't confused and think that, I mean, they thought it was going to happen tomorrow. We'd all have apps on our phone and getting the information that was necessary. So what is the USGS doing to coordinate better and message, kind of speak with one voice, which I think is important?
Sure. Yeah, we're actually making a lot of effort in that direction. But first, let me say, obviously, it's very difficult to control the spin that the media puts on the stories that they write. But we have developed or been attempting to develop common talking points between USGS and Cal OES, and in fact we've had several meetings with the Cal OES staff in that regard. I believe it was about 2 weeks ago. We sent them a draft copy of talking points and hoping to work those out so that we'll have common messaging. And you're right, the confusion is certainly not helpful. Unfortunately, because this involves numbers and there are subtleties involved in this, it's easy for it to get confused. You could see from my presentation that there's a different price tag for the state versus the whole West Coast, for construction versus ongoing maintenance, and so we've certainly worked to simplify the message so that there's not more confusion than there already is.
Thank you, Mr. Given.
Thank you, Mr. Jones-Sawyer.
I'm kind of curious. As this warning system is developed, I know I've worked with a lot of emergency management organizations, police, fire, and they have their own internal incident command system, but even that may be dated. I don't know what it's called now, but that was in '94. It may be called something different now. But then they have to be activated. And so how were you envisioning this early warning system coordinating with police, fire, and others so that they can then become activated so that we're all moving and syncing as one to get things done?
Mm-hmm. I think you'll be hearing some testimony just a little bit later that involves a company that's involved in helping bridge that gap. We have also had quite active discussions with LA County Fire, LA City Fire, City of San Francisco about ways that we can get the output from the Shake Alert system into those systems. As you can imagine, they have radio systems that are different. We all know that issue, and getting the information transmitted out to the folks who really need it is a challenge, and one that's going to have to be addressed by coordination between the system and those who use it, probably with active involvement of the private sector who provides all of the equipment that they use to transmit that information. The list of beta users, of which there are approximately 3 dozen, include many of the county EOCs and in some cases fire departments.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Given, I was wondering if you could elaborate on the funding side. The original legislation by Senator Padilla prohibited the use of general funds, instructed the office to seek a funding mechanism. Mm-hmm. More recently, the Obama administration has put $5 million forward for the Western State System. Could you both identify for the committee how the California system is different than the overall system and how the funding needs correlate between the systems?
Right. Well, the distinction between the state system and the federal system is really virtually non-existent in the state level. So, as I tried to point out in my presentation, the USGS has the mandate for all three federal or all three West Coast states. But the system in California, whether you call it Shake Alert or CUES or the CISN system, is all the same thing. Now, I can't speak for the state because the state process of developing an implementation plan is still underway. But I've been very much involved in it, as have been all the CISN members and various other stakeholders. And so far, the recommendation from the model committee, which I was chair of in the CUES process, is, of course, that the Shake Alert system and the CUES system are the same thing. I can't say very much about funding models for the state of California. That's sort of outside of my domain, but I believe Director Ghilarducci may speak to that later on in his testimony. At the federal level, again, this year, as a result of the Cromnibus bill that passed very late in the fiscal year in December, there was $5 million added, not in fact by the administration, but by Congress for earthquake early warning. And then in next year's fiscal request from the executive side is a total of $5 million, a total of $1.5 million, which is already in the USGS base, and an additional $3.5 million on top of that in order to advance earthquake early warning. Of course, what the FY16 budget will be, your guess is as good as mine.
And could you elaborate a little bit more on the number that at least I've seen thrown around is $16 million plus for the West Coast early warning system? How do we fit into that as California?
Well, the simple answer is 12 million of the 16 is California, and the balance is the Pacific Northwest.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Linder.
First off, thank you very much. And also, I don't know if you can see that in the audience, but I think thank you for that slide where it shows the guy getting his eyes sliced open with a razor. I think it's a very good example of how delicate this or how important an early warning system could be. Now, the question I have is there some sort of an oversight or transparency mechanism built into to the funding of this system? I mean, I can imagine that it'd be easy for entities to get carried away as far as the spending is concerned.
Well, I'm not sure exactly I understand your question. The numbers that I presented are based on the published implementation plan, so that's been out there since April. And, of course, any federal dollars go through the Department of Interior, then the U.S. Geological Survey, and then down to the project level for distribution to the CISN partners and use internally to USGS. In addition to those, there are several advisory groups and oversight groups within the USGS. There's the CSAC and the what is it? We have a program council that also reviews any of the project plans that we put together. With the $5 million that will be distributed this fiscal year, we are just about to issue a request for proposals, and then those will be reviewed, as we usually do in our funding process, before we expend the dollars to build additional seismic stations, improve the existing seismic stations, and continue the work in developing the Shake Alert system.
Okay, do we have any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir, for your presentation. And at this time, we're going to move forward to panel 4, the role of academia. If both Richard Allen and Thomas Heaton would please approach. Welcome, gentlemen. Please introduce yourself and proceed with your presentation.
So I'm Professor Thomas Heaton. I'm a professor of engineering and also geophysics at the California Institute of Technology. I'm the director of the Earthquake Engineering Research Laboratory at Caltech, and I'm a co-principal investigator on the CISN Shake Alert project.
And I am Richard Allen. I'm Professor of Earth and Planetary Science and the Director of the UC Berkeley Seismological Laboratory. Chairman Hall, Chairman Gray, and members of the Joint Committee, thank you for this opportunity to describe the contributions that the academic community has made and more significantly can make towards California's earthquake early warning system. As just introduced myself, I'm at the UC Berkeley Seismological Laboratory, and my research group has been developing, testing, and implementing earthquake early warning methodologies and systems for over a decade at this point. It is now time for everyone in California to have open access to public earthquake alerts in our great state. Above all else, this is a matter of public safety. UC Berkeley looks forward to continuing to help facilitate the realization of that goal with the various partners, several of whom, of course, are appearing here today. So the Berkeley Seismological Laboratory operates several networks of geophysical sensors that span Northern California. Data from these seismic and geodetic instruments stream into the real-time earthquake information system of the California Integrated Seismic Network, the CISN, that you've already heard about. The partners of which comprise the partners that comprise the CISN then deliver this earthquake information, such as the strength, the size of ground motion, shortly after the occurrence to the public, to government entities, and to the private sector. The CISN is a close and productive partnership of extremely committed professionals. You've heard the list: California Office of Emergency Services, the California Geologic Survey, UC Berkeley, Caltech, the U.S. Geologic Survey, and multiple private sector partners. And this diverse partnership brings a stability and a robustness to the delivery of earthquake hazard information that is really key. As a state, we now take it for granted that the CISN delivers information about earthquake locations, magnitudes, maps of shaking that are used by the emergency response agencies. These data-driven services are the outcomes of research and development done by the CISN partners. This same research and development partnership has resulted in the system that we now call Shake Alert, that today delivers earthquake alerts to several dozen beta test users across our state. So Shake Alert today is a statewide, network-based approach to earthquake early warning. It makes use of about 400 sensors already distributed across the state to detect earthquakes occurring anywhere in the state, track their progress, and issue alerts. The advantage of this approach is that the warning times can be significant, up to a minute. It also can provide alerts to everyone who will experience significant shaking anywhere in the state. The feasibility and advantages of earthquake early warning was most clearly demonstrated by the recent magnitude 6 Napa earthquake. Shake Alert detected this event and issued a warning to test users across the San Francisco Bay Area.
Earthquake, light, shaking, expected in 2 seconds.
This was the alert that was received at the San Francisco Department of Emergency Management in downtown San Francisco. They received 9 seconds of warning. 9 seconds might not sound like a lot, but your brain can process the warning and take action to mitigate the impacts of the strong shaking that is to follow. Now, the amount of warning time that you can receive for an earthquake is dependent upon your location relative to the epicenter of the earthquake, as shown by the map here for the Napa quake. We detect the earthquake using sensors close to the epicenter and then issue the alert at the speed of light, much faster than the speed that the seismic waves travel. Therefore, our alerts arrive before the shaking. In the case of the Napa quake, there was 5 seconds of warning at UC Berkeley, 8 seconds in Oakland, 9 seconds in San Francisco, and 20 seconds in Mountain View, all locations of some of our beta test users. This earthquake also demonstrated the need to invest in the seismic network infrastructure in order to maximize the potential of California's earthquake early warning system. In the Napa quake, the sensor closest to the epicenter was an old, outdated generation instrument which was much slower than the sensors that are part of the rest of the network. This delayed the alert by 2.3 seconds. With the planned upgrade to these old generation instruments, the alert would have been faster and Napa could have received a warning. Likewise, the current performance of the system varies across the state. Where there's denser instrumentation, the warnings are faster and more accurate. A fully functional system will require dense instrumentation across the fault zones all across the state. So today, Shake Alert has several dozen test users. These include large groups or agencies that are implementing their own actions, such as BART, Metrolink, Google, Amgen, PG&E, Southern California Edison, and the Los Angeles Unified School District. User groups are also include notification companies who are interested in broadcasting alerts to the public when the system becomes public. These include Early Warning Labs, who are here today, ATOC, and Regroup. BART has already implemented an automated train stopping system that slows and stops trains during significant earthquake. That system activated seconds prior to shaking in the Napa quake and would have stopped trains, though none were actually running at 3:20 in the morning. Following the success of the Shake Alert for the Napa quake, the city of San Francisco is now in the process of distributing Shake Alert to all 50 firehouses so that they can initiate their response of automatically opening up firehouse doors seconds before the shaking starts. Under the notable leadership of Cal OAS Director Ghilarducci and at the direction of SB 135, authored by Senator Padilla last year and signed by Governor Brown, the systematic implementation plan for California's earthquake early warning system is now underway and being developed so that we can move forward towards a comprehensive, robust, and fully public alert system. In order to achieve this shared vision, the state will need additional seismic stations, improved communication, development of alerting pathways, and education of users, a broad public-private partnership, then various forms of support from both the public and the private sectors is needed to facilitate these goals. This partnership is demonstrated by the various groups who are actually here participating today. With respect to UC Berkeley's role in the future, the Berkeley Seismological Laboratory will continue to operate and contribute data from our geophysical networks. We will continue our research into the earthquake process in order to further improve early warning systems. And we will also continue to engage new partners from the private sector through our Earthquake Research Affiliates program in order to ensure we are delivering the earthquake hazard information that they need. Most importantly, we will continue to work closely with Director Ghilarducci and Cal OAS, our great partners within the CISN and at the USGS, and all of the private stakeholders. I also wanted to thank you in advance for the state legislators' ongoing support for this important public safety and public service effort. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input.
Thanks. So it goes without saying that I'm actually in complete agreement with the statements that have already been provided. It's no accident because these are my colleagues. We've been working together on this for more than a decade, planning for this eventuality that we will be able to provide meaningful seismic alerting in the state of California. And we've developed a well-reasoned, well-thought-out plan. It's been reviewed many times. Our funding has been kind of slow coming, so we've had plenty of time to think about what it is we want to do if we ever really get the resources to do it. And I'm confident we've got a good plan at the moment. We're at a very critical stage in this program. We've had some development funding from the U.S. Geological Survey and especially the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. We're eternally grateful to them for providing the funding to make a demonstration system that's now up and running for dozens of different agencies so they can see what the technology looks like. But we need to be very clear about this. It's a demonstration system. It's not been developed to the degree of robustness or reliability that can be appropriate to control the infrastructure of California. And that's just what we're talking about, is building a system that controls our infrastructure. So we've had great success, but if we're going to automatically control all of our trains, all of our communication systems, our refineries, we need a system that's really heavy-duty, robust system. And we're working hard on how to do that, but we're not at a position where we'd say, just unleash this demonstration system. But here's the catch. These companies have got the demonstration system, they say it. What if we have an important earthquake now? Should we use it? Well, it's not really ready to go. We hope that before the earthquake happens, we can turn it into something that we can say, go ahead and use it. We're certainly not going to retract it, but we're in this funny in-between stage, and we need to progress beyond a demonstration system that's been developed by universities into a system that's a much more robust system that's fully supported by our governmental agencies as well as universities. So because of that, I mean, I am so incredibly thankful to be here and to the leadership that's been taken in the state of California to allow us to think about how to make this transition, especially Alex Padilla's bill. I can't say enough about, just as a Californian and a scientist, how important that was to see somebody step forward and say, I'm willing to take a political leadership to help get this vision turned into a reality. And now there's the CUES process with OES and Mark Ghilarducci helping to lead the way there. And I'm confident that process will come to a fruitful end. It's pretty clear that the federal government has a role in this, but there will be no meaningful system without a state role as well. So that's very important to us. I especially want to focus on the role of universities because I work for a university, and Caltech and the USGS in particular in Southern California have been collaborating for decades to run the Southern California Seismic Network. And it's interesting collaboration because there's university people involved and then there's federal government people involved. And I can guarantee you those are very different kinds of agencies. And yet we're actually right next to each other across the street. We meet all the time. We're good friends and colleagues. I used to work for the U.S. Geological Survey, and we share a common goal. We share a vision of a California that is better prepared to respond to earthquakes. And as a group, we recognize that each of our organizations can bring different kinds of resources to this collaboration. And another one of our partners, of course, is the California Geological Survey and also the California Office of Emergency Services. I've been through decades of emergencies where the California Office of Emergency Services has worked together with Caltech and the USGS in very tense situations. And this working relationship's very important to all Californians because this system provides the critical information in a crisis. It's the information that goes to Southern California Edison, it goes to the gas company, it goes to Caltrans, goes to the railroads. All these different agencies that run critical infrastructure get their information from CISN. And it's important for all of us to understand what a critical piece of information this is. Now, CISN, to most people, you never see it that much because it's been peacetime. It's been pretty quiet. I know the people in Napa may not quite agree with that, but California's been through decades of relative quiet. The last really big important earthquake was the Northridge earthquake, but really Northridge and Loma Prieta were kind of close hits. The real earthquake in California's history was 1906 San Francisco. And of course, at the end of the 1906 earthquake, the largest city in the western United States was gone. It wasn't there anymore. Just look at the pictures. And, you know, sometimes we hear this question of what's in our future. We have no idea, but we do know you should not underestimate earthquakes. I mean, they are a very serious threat. And this is, as I describe this is really the key to the nature of this problem. Most of the time, this system, we live in relative peace, that we'll have some magnitude 4 earthquakes happen all the time. People will get excited about them. You'll see them on the news. People will feel them, and the system will come on and say, there will be light shaking in 10 seconds. People will feel it, they'll be excited, and it will all be a big success. Occasionally, along will come a Loma Prieta or a Napa earthquake, and then we're talking about serious stuff. There will be deaths, heavily shaken areas in close to the epicenter, and the system will have to respond very rapidly because the heavy shaking will be in close to the earthquake. But occasionally, maybe once or twice in a lifetime, a 1906 earthquake is going to show up. It's going to show up in the Bay Area, it'll show up in Southern California, and when that happens, everything will change for everyone. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, the entire infrastructure will be under duress. Our highways, our communication systems, our power systems, distribution of food, it's going to be a real mess for all of us. We'll all wish we had done far more when those earthquakes hit. When this kind of emergency response happens in that really large earthquake, we'll need special kinds of tools because the earthquake will play out over minutes. It will start in one place and will rupture over hundreds of miles of a fault. And it will give us the best opportunity to warn people that the shaking is coming. But at the same time, it's the most challenging scientific problem in terms of telling people what's coming, because the earthquake starts at a point and then it starts to spread along the fault, and you've got to tell people the earthquake is getting bigger, and even though you're a long way from the epicenter, there's a good chance you'll be shaken strongly. So we need a system that responds in small earthquakes, magnitude 6 earthquakes, and also responds in magnitude 8 earthquakes. And this is a technical challenge. It's not a simple problem, and that's why universities like Caltech are so important in this problem. We've got a team of geophysicists, earthquake engineers, and also information scientists all working together for how to make the appropriate decision given the information that's flowing into the system. And all I can say is, at first, we describe this as a simple problem. The waves go out, we detect it, and we send out a warning. But the warning really is a message of what's about to come. And what's important about the warning is, what do you do with that information? So what you do in a classroom with students or what you do in an elevator may be very different from the kinds of actions that you would take if you're operating a high-speed rail network. Or it may be very different from the operations you would take in a refinery. By the way, one of the big potential payoffs in this system is decreasing the number of fires that may be started in future earthquakes. We've been pretty lucky. Loma Prieta almost started another conflagration. It didn't, but there's always the question, if you get enough fires started simultaneously in an earthquake, you may not be able to put them out. So decreasing the number of ignitions is an important area that we really want to follow. I'd like to say that I've been in this business for a while. I started just after the San Fernando earthquake. And in the San Fernando earthquake, it took days for people to figure out what it was that had happened. The analysis was done with slide rules and with telephones and maps. Today, we're at a point where you see the alert actually comes to us, tells us what's going on even before we feel it. And in the coming decades, we'll be in a position where all of our smartphones will be hooked into this system. All of our automobiles will be hooked in, our smart televisions, our smart classrooms. We all see this coming. What's a little different about the earthquake problem is that, unlike other parts of our lives, earthquakes don't hit us every day, thank God. So we haven't had the opportunity to really develop these systems the same way we've developed systems already for, say, the weather. But we know these earthquake issues are coming at us, and we need to work in a preemptive forecasting way to understand how that when this opportunity comes from a big earthquake, we'll have a system that actually works for us. This is really a critical time for all of us as Californians. I've seen California step up in the past. It was so impressive to see the state of California take care of all of our fragile bridges in the 1980s. This is really our opportunity to make a new information infrastructure for California. This information infrastructure, California companies are already at the lead in terms of making information science systems that all around the world. The development of information science systems in California will be shared throughout the rest of the planet, and I'm sure it will be an export industry for us in the future. It's our time to meet our destiny. Thank you.